Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps. Today we have a very special guest with us, the Apostolic Vicar of Arabia, Bishop Paul Hinder. Bishop Hinder governs perhaps the largest Catholic territory in the world, over 3 million square kilometers, including 6 states, among them Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. It is my great pleasure to welcome Bishop Hinder with us today. Bishop Hinder, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Bishop
Pleasure
Hinder,
also for me.
it is often said that there are no Christians in these Arab states. What is the Christian presence in this region?
That was even my opinion until 10 years ago, and the opinion of many of my friends when they knew that I was appointed bishop in this region. But the reality is completely different. We have at least 1.3 million Catholics, most probably over 2 million, in the 6 countries, coming from all the parts of the world. Most of them are Asian people from India, Philippines, and other states. There are many communities. The communities recognized and of course also communities which are not known, where Christians simply are practicing their faith.
Many of these are Islamic states. How would you characterize the church? Is it a catacomb church?
All the 6 states are Islamic states. Only the practice regarding other religions is not in all the states the same. I wouldn't say that we are all over the vicariate a catacomb church. Of course, there is at least one state where it is true, that is Saudi Arabia. It is sufficient to read in the reports of the human rights organizations to be aware of the reality there. I don't need to go into the details. But for the rest, I would rather characterize our church as a pilgrimage church.
And what happens, for example, are homes considered, could a Christian practice his or her faith within the home, or how severe are the restrictions in some of these countries?
Private worshipping is allowed officially even in Saudi Arabia. The practice is another thing. The problem arises when priests are leading liturgy, for example. Then we cannot go simply in a house, even if it is done sometimes, but we cannot have regular liturgies, for example, in a private house. We have to remain where we are allowed to worship and to celebrate. That's the general rule. Now, of course, then in practice, sometimes there is a major flexibility, even given by the government.
What about the wearing of religious symbols, for example, crosses or things like that? How is that perceived?
Yeah, in most of the states there is no problem. Those who are known as Christians, they may bear a cross. They may, the sisters which are in the United Emirates, they have their religious habit. I have no difficulties in Abu Dhabi to go with the religious habit in town, or to do shopping, or when I go to the haircut, I go in my religious habit. There are the hairdressers are Muslim, not locals, but there is no difficulty. There is a very friendly relationship. We can very often see in the car that they have the rosary with the cross on the mirror and so on. That is not a difficulty. It would be a difficulty in one country.
Earlier we spoke about the fact that this is a pilgrim church.
Yeah.
What is a pilgrim church? What do you mean by a pilgrim church?
I would say it is a church composed by expatriates. People who are living or working in these states, in the Gulf states, they have not the intention to come for their whole life. And even if they had the intention, normally they wouldn't be allowed because the government
the visas and
once they are no more in the age to work there, they have to go back in their home country normally.
Where do the majority of these Christians come from?
The majority of these Christians come from India, especially from the state of Kerala, and then from the Philippines, from other Asian countries, from Arabic-speaking countries like Syria, Palestine, Iraq, Lebanon, of course, and so on.
What about the local Christians? Are there local Christians communities, and how considerable?
Local Christians in the strict sense of the word we have not. And it is not allowed to accept conversions, for example. If we did it, we would not only put in risk the respective people, we would also have to stop our whole activity for the already existing Catholics. Conversions are possible among the expatriates which are not Christians. And we have every year a certain number of adult baptisms coming from other religions, but never coming from the Muslim.
Now, what happens? A young man, a young Muslim, wants to become a Christian. How do you respond to this request?
Yeah, there are two possibilities. One could be a trap. That is very often the case.
Is it common?
It is possible, and it happened that we were tested how we reacted. I was never in this case personally, but I know others have been in this case. And that's why we have the policy not to accept conversions in the countries. If someone seriously would like to convert to Christianity, to become a Catholic, I would have to tell him, please go in another countries where there is individual religious freedom, for your own sake and also for the sake of the already existing church, because we would have to close the whole activities.
Not only that, but it also can become dangerous for the family of that individual.
That's why I said for their own sake.
Because in fact it is a life-threatening decision.
In some countries it's really life-threatening, in others it would be at least burdened by heavy social consequences and exclusion from the family, or problems of the heritage, for example, the possibility being excluded from professional career and so on.
In this regard, are Muslims converting to Christianity? Do you know, nonetheless, despite this heavy burden, are there cases of Muslims converting?
In my own church, I don't know a case, at least not from recent times. There were in the past, but that goes back quite a lot of time when there were also political rules. I'm not sure about other Christian communities. That's another question. But regarding the Catholic Church, we have this policy which I explained just before. Yeah.
What about the other way? Are there Christians converting to the Muslim faith?
There are. They are even published sometimes in the newspaper, because that, of course, is allowed in the different countries. The reasons can be marriage, mixed marriages, because a man has not the right to marry a Muslim woman without converting to Islam. Automatically, someone who is married to a Muslim woman is understood as a Muslim. Then, of course, we have some cases where people, for economic reasons, are converting because it's easier. Sometimes they are promised to get a higher salary, more commodities regarding houses and accommodations, access to other possibilities also on a professional level. That happens.
Are there then restrictions for Christians in the in their professional development?
In the professional development, I would say it depends on the category. Of course, the more we go in the political collaboration or participation, of course, about the civil rights we don't speak. We have the Christians cannot become citizens of these countries. That's excluded until now. But of course, the closer you are to the centers of power, the less it is the case that Christians are in these higher positions. It happens. It is not excluded, but it's rather seldom. Yeah.
How does the Church live her mission of evangelization in these countries?
Well, first of all, I would say that in spite of the limitations, we enjoy this relative freedom, and we have a very, very active and lively church. I would say much more alive than, for example, in Europe, in my home country.
How would you express that or see that?
Yeah, just to tell you, of course, we have a few worship places, that is true, but our masses, our churches are always full. We have thousands and thousands of people during the weekend which are coming to Mass, and especially in the big cities like Abu Dhabi or Dubai. Our problem is not how to fill the churches, our problem is how to find space for the faithful who are attending the different liturgies, especially during the feast days like Christmas or the Holy Week. Just to give you an example, for example, I had the midnight Mass in Abu Dhabi. There were at least 10,000 people on the compound celebrating with us the Christmas midnight Mass. Or I remember 2 years back, when I was new as auxiliary bishop in the region, I was during the whole week in Dubai. And Mass of the Last Supper on Holy Thursday, there were, following people who knows the situation, they were telling me that there were around 30,000 people on the compound only for this Holy Mass of Maundy Thursday. Just to give you an example. We were forced to do the Good Friday liturgy. It's fully against normal rules, but because of space problems, we were forced to celebrate it 3 times during the day. And there were at least each time 10,000 people.
It's a joy.
Yeah, of course it is a joy. That's something very comforting too. And people are very, very devoted. And it's not only, as some people sometimes think, that it's a superficial religiosity. It's not true. Of course, there's many traditional faith, but I think that these people are living an authentic faith, and because of the particular situation, maybe even more profoundly than in their home countries. It's very interesting. Sometimes people coming from India, priests, for example, visitors, they say, our own people are more devout here in Arabia than at home.
What about the other Christian communities in this area of the world? What other churches in the Christian community?
Yeah, I would say we have representatives of all practically of all the denominations and the different churches. The Eastern, within the Catholic Church, all the right churches, of course, Syro-Malabar, Syro-Malankar, Maronites, Greek Catholics, Armenians, and so on. And then we have all the other Christian churches and communities, Anglicans, Protestants, Orthodox, Coptics. And
have you seen a rise in the so-called new churches, the Pentecostal evangelical churches? Have you seen an influence there at all?
Yeah, sure. The Pentecostals, I would say, they are rather active. They are also going sometimes in the interior of the countries. Sometimes they are also creating problems for not only for the Catholics, but for all the established churches, because generally, or sometimes they have a more aggressive style of announcing the gospel, and even to locals. And then the authorities are reacting. but they are not reacting against this particular group. They are reacting then against the Christian churches in general. So very often then we have a reduced freedom regarding our activities.
What is the relationship between the Catholic Church and these new churches? Are there meetings, negotiations, discussions, a dialogue, or is it?
Yeah, as far as it is possible to contact them and to have representatives, there are. We have a Middle East Church Council in the region, where all the churches and groups are represented. The problem is very often that among these new movements, if someone starts to preach the gospel, he constitutes a community, and it's a kind of new church. And of course, a church council can no more be active if groups with 50 or 80 members are understood as a known church. And that is one of the practical problems, to have a representative, someone who can speak in the name of these groups. But among us, the different churches, the representatives, generally we have no particular problems. We are also normally locally very close one to another, because the different rulers, they give the land to the churches always in the same area. So we are also locally very close one to another.
You are a Swiss
Yes, I am.
national. What drew you, first of all, to the priesthood and then to the missionary life?
I was, since my childhood, attracted by the reality of a religious life, to become something like a parish priest, because I didn't know exactly all the differences between diocesan priest and the religious priest.
And this came from your family?
It was influenced by the family, even though we had not, except one uncle who was Capuchin lay brother, a Franciscan lay brother, which impressed me a lot. And we all liked him very much. But otherwise, there were no special relationship to priest. It was the reality of the family in a, by the way, Protestant context. We were one of the few Catholic families in the region. And the life in the parish, also the example of the parish priest, which impressed me a lot at that time. And then later I was at the boarding school of the Capuchins. In the meantime, one of my brothers had become a Benedictine monk, and so it went away forward step by step.
And to the missionary life?
Missionary life, I have to distinguish two phases. I joined the Capuchin order with the idea to become once a missionary in Africa. But it didn't happen, and I was called to other activities, mainly in the teaching and the formation of the young Capuchins. But then, later on, now, I was called to be a bishop, and I became a missionary now, in this sense. The fact that I became a bishop here, that is a known story, a very complicated one.
But it wasn't a choice.
It was not my choice. It was really the choice of others. And
was it difficult for you?
It was difficult for me to accept when I heard for the first time that I was a serious candidate. I was involved in the processes of the nomination because, as a member of the General Council of the Capuchins, who traditionally have to propose names for this vicariate apostolic in Arabia. Of course, I was involved as a member of the General Council, but nobody spoke about me, and I tried to avoid that ever my name was mentioned. But then, after a long process, which lasted more than 2 years, finally there was no more a way out. I had to give in, because there was a sign from higher authorities who told that my name had to be put on the list.
And you are, in fact, the first bishop to be ordained in Arabia.
That's correct, because in former times it was simply not possible, also for technical reasons. When I was appointed bishop, then there was raised the question where to be ordained, by whom, and then I said I would like to be ordained where I have to be bishop among the people, if it is possible. And this desire was welcomed by my predecessor, by the people, of course, which enjoyed this reality. And
it must have been an enormous celebration.
It was, yeah, there were around 6,000 people present, yes. We had an open air.
Bishop, is this your adopted country now? Could you see yourself staying there for the rest of your time?
Yeah, we have, I have to admit, it's, once I had accepted, I said to myself, now you are the shepherd of this flock, forget your home country. Forget, of course I never will forget it, but you are now here, that's your new home. Like Abraham, who had to leave his home country and to go elsewhere. I felt a little bit like that. Of course, I am an expatriate, like my brothers and sisters, and it will never become the home in the classical sense. There are different reasons, there are cultural reasons, there are linguistic reasons. I don't know the Arabic language, because most of my Christians are, the common language for us is the English, even if among the Christians there are many which are not very familiar with the English, but it is the lingua franca for us in the church. And I would be happy if I knew the Arabic language, but it's not so easy in my age to learn it. I still hope to be able to at least to have some classical expressions to show my goodwill. But I think serious conversations also with the authorities I will have always to do in English, also for question or in another language which is familiar to me, also for the clarity, because I can't allow me to speak in a language where I can't express me.
But you went from, it's a land of contrasts. You went from the Swiss mountains to the flat deserts.
Well, especially I came from the green country to the desert, yes, that's true. But that's not the biggest problem. I had never difficulties to adapt in other contexts, even earlier. I had several times during my life to change a little bit lifestyle.
Bishop, what would be your greatest joy in your new vocation in Arabia?
One of the greatest joys would be if I could attend all my brothers and sisters which are living in this vicariate. In reality, I can't, even though I am doing, like my predecessor, every year the pastoral visit in all the countries, or at least where I can go, and to visit all the parishes, to remain in touch with the faithful. And that's marvelous. That's marvelous. Just now, a few weeks back in Oman, someone told me, look, I am an Indian, but it is the first time here in Oman that I can touch the bishop so closely. So that are wonderful experiences, to be close to the people in spite of that. But I know there are hundreds, thousands of Catholics I can't get through, and that would be the...
You have 3 million square kilometers of territory. It's a big task. What is your greatest suffering in this?
No, it's also connected to this. of course, to know that many, many, many of our Christians would like to practice their faith and they can't. That is one of my biggest sufferings. Then, of course, more on an individual basis, I am feeling sometimes very alone, culturally, linguistically. I feel sometimes very alone in my decisions because we are very few. We are 45 priests for this huge flock. And of course also my collaborators are very, very faithful and active. But I have not a big episcopal curia. We are 3 people, the bishop, the vicar general and the chancellor, and they have a lot to do too. So sometimes the bishop simply has to do everything, sometimes even to go to the door because nobody else is there, and has to do the phone calls. We have an open house. So of course it's not always easy to are balanced in this whole situation where you have to do from social cases till a diplomatic relationship with the government. And then the study, personal studies, so to prepare the homilies, because I have a lot to preach and a lot to speak, because in these countries where the bishop has to go, he has also to speak. And that's not always easy for me.
Bishop Paul Hinder, I would like to thank you for having been with us today. And we will continue to pray for your work and that you might meet all of these Christians that are...
That's what I need the most, not only myself, but the whole flock in this region. I think they are also expecting this solidarity in faith and prayer of the other Christians in the world. And they too, they pray a lot for the others.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having been with us on our program today. And we encourage you to pray for the faithful in Arabia and for the work of Bishop Paul Hinder. And if you'd like to know more information, I would encourage you to look at the website or the telephone number at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next time on our production, Where God Weeps.